I think that probably the most obvious political touchstone, or one of them on the record, is the old soul song for the New World Order. That song is definitely, parts of it are pulled right out of real life. There was a big protest in New York City leading up to the Iraq War. And yeah, my friends and I went out and, you know, protesting, and that time, I mean, I think my time of becoming interested in politics, I guess, goes back to the 2000 election. You know, I was 20 years old, but I remember being in Europe on tour, and it was like, we don't have a president still? Like, what is this all about? You know, and then 9/11 happened, and then, of course, it was on everyone's mind.
Gray light, new day leaks through the window. An old soul song comes on the alarm clock radio. We walk the 40 blocks to the middle of the place we heard that everything would be. And there were barricades to keep us off the street, but the crowd kept pushing forward till they swallowed the police. Yeah, they went wild.
I don't know, I just felt like I needed to know more about what was happening in the world after 9/11, and then that kind of led right into moving to New York and the war and the second election of Bush the second time, which I did a thing called Vote for Change, a concert tour with Bruce Springsteen and REM leading up to the war. And yeah, it's funny to think back, like, you know, it's kind of hard to get waves of enthusiasm around John Kerry, but we sure tried. And it wasn't just us. There was like, our leg of the tour was Springsteen and REM and us, but there was different. I think My Morning Jacket was out with like Pearl Jam and, I don't know, Dave Matthews. There was a whole network of people that were all part of the same organization trying to get Kerry elected. And that was, one of my first real introduction to complete political disappointment, like really putting your heart and soul in is something that doesn't come to fruition. So, like, we all live and learn.
We left before the dust had time to settle, and all the broken glass swept off the avenue. And all the way home held your camera like a Bible, just wishing so bad that it held some kind of truth. And I stood nervous next to you in the dark room. You dropped the paper in the water, and it all begins to bloom. Yeah, they go wild.
Collectively, we're all pretty pissed about the weird wars we're getting involved with for seemingly greed purposes. And like, I remember it was 2000. We were in Europe when all this recount between fucking Al Gore and George Bush were happening. We're like, what is happening? It took a month, and we were in Europe this whole time. We thought Al Gore would win. We're like, Jesus Christ. And then, 9/11 happened the next year, and like, then going to war in the Middle East. And after George Bush Sr. like was in the Middle East in the 90s when I was in high school, like it was just felt like this weird tragic continuation of fucking oil, money, greed. I don't know. It just didn't sit well with any of us. And it just felt wrong and stupid and kind of evil and pointless and worth noting, I guess, and remarking on. And Conor did many times in the songs and in protests. And like, this is a true story about him and being in New York and doing these, because in Omaha, Nebraska, that shit, you didn't have big protests like that. Nowadays there actually are, but like back in the early 2000s, people weren't as engaged and as passionate. And I think that was a moving thing for Conor to feel this camaraderie for once, you know, with tens of thousands of fucking other human beings having the same impassioned belief and being amazed by that. And holy shit, the power of the fucking people, like, coming together. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, you know, like it's reassuring and kind of, it gives you some kind of like joy or pride to have that affirmation in your fellow human beings that you're not alone. And like, you really do feel like there's a lot of power when people come together in protest and just come to the streets and like proclaim a certain thing in unity. It feels empowering.
Yeah, they go wild. Yeah, they go wild. Yeah, they go wild.
The pedal steel is obviously a big part of our band, but I think the part on that has a very bittersweet sound to it, which I appreciate. Still to this day, that little drum break thing that happens towards the end of the song before the kind of big outro. I remember when I think it was Clark Beckley's old friend plays in the Faint. I don't know, that happened because that was another song we played live a lot before recording the album. So I always liked that part, the drum break into the big chords and the outro. Very cathartic, I suppose.
I think it might have been one of the first songs that Conor showed me. I think it was at the Bowery Ballroom. He showed me this song and we played it. I think it was just him and me. I was just on like banjo or mandolin or something. I can't remember if it was Monsters of Folk, Bright Eyes and Friends, but I remember he's showing it to me in a dressing room at Bowery Ballroom. Yeah, it was this song. It was that song. And I remember him saying, I picture like this big moments, especially in the weird little pause. And so it wasn't until like months later that we actually got to the studio to record it. But that was one because of what he said in the dressing room. Like, I was like, well, let's use this one for like two drummers, you know, just because a lot of times that adds impact or like bigness or like the sound of a large group, even though we were a small group. And they went wild. You know, we break it down there just for effect of like, I find that, I don't know, when you say something softly, it makes people listen more. I don't know. It was kind of always in Conor's, it was his idea to do that, obviously, but it was the dynamic like shifts in the song, I think, are important in even the story of protests and an alarm clock radio, like just coming out of a slumber to being, you know, like just shocked. And there's just little nuggets of imagery that I think piecing the song together and having employed of like whispery vocals that are real quiet, then all of a sudden getting really big with drum, dig it. It sounded bigger to me than what it actually was, actually recorded, but unfortunately, but like it still is effective. The sort of jarring shifts. It's a real kind of catchy, pleasant, it's like melody, and even though the song isn't that pleasant.
And just when I get so lonesome I can't speak, I see some flowers on a hill